The crowd sets up a fine din for the start of this match. It's New Zealand in possession as we begin the second test, and they're looking for something extra. They'll want a good start, and that, oh, it's worked out all right. As Colling feeds it back out to Robury, looking for Loughagan.
A beautiful delivery, Robury to the post, Loughagan with a good offer, and the reply in goals.
Carissa Toms starting centre for Australia. Let's watch this defensive effort of New Zealand, which really troubled Australia at times. McInnes finds herself open. Toms drives down the left, ball lays out. Back across for O'Donnell.
McMahon just being squeezed out of the play, a little tentative to start and allowing Borlase to control things in a circle.
So one apiece in the first 35 seconds.
Contact wing defence.
Hear the voice of Bill Alexander from Farnborough, Hampshire, the English umpire. I think he did a pretty good job back in Hamilton in the first test.
Well, the umpires for the first test certainly allowed open contest. It was played at a frantic pace and a lot of body in the game, but they were consistent with it. Oh, misunderstanding. Tom's expecting Borlase to see the opportunity there. Borlase eyes off the ball.
Through quick hands and a short pass rule by Sharon Burge. Well, the pace moniker is on right from the start, as we might have expected.
Certainly is, Steve, and no touch of nerves at all by either side. Perhaps Jenny Borlase starting off a bit tentative, working with McMahon, but at the moment Australia doing well, New Zealand taking it right up to them.
And McMahon missing her first shot in an international against New Zealand. She's only played 2. They were in the Caribbean earlier this year.
Loughagan in sensational form to open this match. She is the danger in the New Zealand side, and we've been concerned that if they can get good possession, she will dominate.
O'Donnell stops to gather. Borlase driving along the baseline. McMahon, she's looking for her first goal and does it. I reckon McMahon's got the pace to really trouble many if they get enough possession down that end.
Sharon McMahon is a brilliant athlete, and I think once she settles, and you can tell there's a little bit of nerves there in the body language and just not quite sure when to dominate and when to not. When she settles, though, she could well cause some head spins in that New Zealand defence.
Toms with it. McMahon.
Risky option by Carissa Toms then, but Many was caught a little ground bound and eyes down and allowed that one to go over.
Australia draw level after 2.5 minutes at 3-3. Kept in by Illich, but Loughagan will receive it from Robury.
Robury, casual as you like, offloads the ball, doesn't bother to watch the shot, just adjusts the ponytail.
Belinda Collings lost a hoof, so we'll stop while the shoe goes back on. Yvonne Willering ought to be well pleased with the start that sees her team 1 up. So the pace just as frantic as it was in Hamilton, Anne, but maybe not quite as fluent or organised, but we'd expect that from the Australian end.
Yes, I think, if anything, there is a touch more control from both teams. I think for Australia, the presence of Carissa Toms will keep that control there, some class through the middle, and she will dictate the rhythm of the game. Willering, no doubt, will be pleased with the start, though, from New Zealand. I think there is a little bit of cautiousness there from them to make sure they capitalise on opportunities.
Ready for the restart, and Toms has it. McInnes breaks through, stops.
She thought about the long ball, but New Zealand already working the press hard, and of course the balls to the corners are the ones they will have been told to ignore. Long and high, and that's one of them.
Great turnover for New Zealand if they can treasure it. Hardcastle back to Nicol, and back to Hardcastle, and that bounce ball across the top of the circle, which she favours. Harvey draws the penalty.
Well, some real brilliance from New Zealand then. Hardcastle, we saw in the first test, has flair to burn, just needs to steady.
Unnecessary replay. Called by Bill Alexander. I think he wants it all the way back, does he?
Goal third, he's setting.
McInnes. Toms. Borlase. And McMahon. McMahon and Borlase have played at this level together only twice, and in the last test against Jamaica and one against Barbados, so we can't expect the fluency in their combination that we see from Wilson and Cusack.
to try and consider the contrast, the Australians, with respect, even with Wilson and Cusack, were a little slow to adjust to the pressure of the New Zealand defence. We don't play it at home, and this is the zone or the press at its best in the world, so it does take a few minutes of adjustment, and I think the first quarter saw that from Australia. They're not doing too bad in this one.
5-all. Well, Monica, what do you make of Sherelle McMahon's entry into the game?
I've been very impressed with her so far to date, Steve. She really hasn't shown any touch of nerves. Once again, Borlase perhaps hesitating on a few passes into her, but O'Donnell ably assisting in Toms. As we've said, she really is caressing the forwards and making sure that the ball gets into them accurately.
It's O'Donnell, Borlase, and McMahon. She is quick. We've been looking forward to seeing her step out, and if only for her athleticism.
Yeah, she's been in superb form in Australia in the Commonwealth Bank Trophy, and she's one of the hottest properties in Australian netball. And I was just thinking Bernice Meni must be wondering what she has to do. She shakes Cusack with her speed and deception, and all she gets is a Sherelle McMahon to contest.
New Zealand by 1.
Oh,
5-0. Oh!
Wanganara lined it up, took the body though.
It's got to come back.
Obstruction, both players out.
Well, 2-on-1, and Borlase has those for breakfast. And Borlase playing her 51st international, so even though, you know, she plays behind Vicky Wilson really for most of her career, she's certainly built up a number of internationals. Colling.
And again, we've seen the characteristic work outside the New Zealand circle, from the corner to the top of the circle, bang to the post. So it's paying dividends for New Zealand. There were touches of it in the first, now they're stringing them together.
And that defensive work brings a 3-second call and a turnover. They look for a 2-goal lead here. Lofhagen. She is a wonderful shooter.
Well, Lofhagen only shadowed in the first test by the brilliance of Vicky Wilson.
Yes, she shot 85% and was still overshadowed. Toms gets a touch.
Inside. Yes, please.
Colling. Hardcastle. Robry, Hardcastle.
Contact, pass the shot. Against goal defence, please.
I think Lofhagen at, what is she, 21, has got a fantastic future ahead of her. If only because of her amazing accuracy.
Defense outside the circle.
Toms.
Obstruction centre.
Borlase.
Borlase under incredible pressure there. Arms from behind and in front.
Not fully in
Good
the
composure
circle.
from the Australian goal shooter. And that brought back because the centre wasn't taken fully in the circle by Anna Robry.
Contact
So the
centre.
goal defence took it from the circle. So Harvey was standing in the circle. It was quite strange, really.
Great stretch from Borlase. Steadies now to try and finish the good work.
Australia.
Vicky Wilson, it's nearly a smile. I'm sure she'll be proud of what's happening out there as Australia endeavours to go with. Oh, McMahon leaps in and draws level at 10.
Good vision from Carissa Toms, and McMahon and Borlase applaud her skill.
Australia.
Quite an interesting scoreboard here, puts up some funny messages. They class that last goal by McMahon as, that's just yummy.
Sarah Sutter, Liz Ellis looking a tad anxious. Australia warming to the task, though. O'Donnell
Advantage obstruction.
holds it up and back plays to McInnes.
We've got a difference of scoring here between what's in the venue, which has Australia 1 ahead, and the scoring of the host broadcaster. So we'll try and sort that out for you as another one goes in from Borlase and for Australia.
Well, the Wellington fans disappointed. Borlase put a long high ball across court, which was just asking to be eaten by Linda Wanganara. It's a sort of play McIntosh would have asked them to avoid.
Colling, hesitant, and Illich, a confidence-building rebound.
Monica, Liz Ellis put in a great game in the first test. How would you compare Illich's performance so far in this one against Loughagan?
She's having her head spun around somewhat, and I'm to the side here of the New Zealand attack line, and Robury and Hardcastle have executed some superb skills. And if they can endure this first quarter and keep that momentum going, they will mix it up for the Australian defenders. But Illich, as we speak, great intercept and turns it around. Well done, Illich.
Thanks, Mon, for getting that message to Illich so quickly for us.
I'm that close, actually.
McMahon drives the baseline and pops it in. Vangana was up for the rebound, but no good.
Time, please.
And Illich has just lost her back bib, if you like. Everything's okay now, and it's Australia by 3. I'm sure that whatever the score at quarter time, McIntosh will leave these 7 out there, give them a chance to work into the game.
So New Zealand's centre, they come through the back door using many. Double play to Robury, but Carissa Toms in wonderful form in defence for the start of this match.
Oh, she gives the reconstructed knee a good workout with that aerial work. Hardcastle. Oh, Harvey riding Colling. And that wasn't the foul that was picked up, but boy, Harvey really gave Colling a workout in Hamilton.
She certainly did. I had a chat to Kath after the match and said, did she think she had any fans in the crowd? And she just laughed. Part of the game, she thought. But I think they both respect her ability and rue the fact that she does ride the player pretty hard.
Ball A's. And a 5-goal lead. Well, after such a promising beginning from New Zealand, the Australians starting to find their rhythm with this changed lineup. Ball A's. Many and Vangana bumping into her, but she's not to be put off.
Great shooting from the Australians. Borlée is really picking up the responsibility well. And McMahon, too, apart from being a great athlete, she's a very sure shot.
Hardcastle, nickel. 3:40 to go in the first quarter. And Loughagan was out of court, so a little bit unlucky there. She positioned herself well, except for her feet, if you know what I mean. Well, Monica, this is quite a turnaround with Australia now up by 6. Any theories?
Theories for the Australians or theories for the New Zealanders, Steve?
Either one.
I think prior to the game we were all suggesting that it had to be much closer, and to come up against New Zealand in the second test, we thought they would come out fighting very hard, which they did in the first few minutes of this term, but Australia settling in very well. And is that scoreline correct at the moment, 17-10?
Looks good to me. Yes, it is.
Exceptional work from the Australians.
Ball A's. O'Donnell. And Toms.
Borlée holds for the screen, but opens herself, so options are plenty in the Australian goal circle.
18-10, the Silver Ferns have stopped. And I think that this lineup can play so fluently for Australia. You've got to sheet home a lot of the credit to the coach, who's obviously got them working well together at training, got them confident in each other, Anne.
I think a huge part of this opening from Australia is the start of Carissa Toms. They were without her in the first test, and I think once she entered the game at half-time, she changed the whole game around. Such is her class, and I think she's contributing a lot in blending both ends of the court in this one.
Oh, what a beauty. Borlée, they worked that up the middle of the court. One pass wide, back it came. Borlée at the post. Good night. 19-10. This is a hammering in the first quarter, and again Australia's taken the crowd out of the game. They wanted to make a lot of noise here. Oh.
Well, even that not falling straight away for the Silver Ferns. Vangana caught with her head down. It was up to Nickel to pick it up.
Under 2 minutes left in the first, and it'll be New Zealand possession. They need 3 or 4 quick goals, or they'll feel like they're out of it already. Colling. Toms having a great game. She certainly made an impact when she came on in the second half in Hamilton. Smart pass in from Colling to Loughagan. And Yvonne Willering with cause to be concerned. So they trail by 8, but they can bring it back to 7.
It's very important that New Zealand do score here, because I want to go to the bench with some measure of confidence that they can string a few more together and haul this game in. Last few minutes have looked like exhibition netball from Australia, but the crowd here trying to rev them up now.
Arby.
And that's beautiful play from the Silver Ferns.
Lochhagen finishes.
Colling just splitting up the Australian defence, direct pathway to the post.
7 the difference. Try again with the centre pass. O'Donnell gets a thump from Bernice Meni, so leaves the pass for McInnes to take. Borlase, Toms, McMahon. Likes the look of that distance. All net. And Linda Blair, Julie Dawson out the back warming up, so Yvonne Willering is not going to wait longer than the first break to try and do something about this, nor should she, I expect. Only seconds to go in the first quarter, but a chance for Lochhagen. Timekeeper making his way around. And won't get to take that centre pass, but boy, what a performance. Toms is ready, the umpires are ready, and we're underway second quarter with New Zealand. So much to do, and they've benched Linda Wangenaar, the goalkeeper, moved Meni back to goalkeeper and brought Belinda Blair on, as they did in Hamilton. It might take more than that, as McMahon puts up the first shot successfully, Anne.
And just looking at the stats from the first quarter, McMahon in brilliant form for Australia. 9 from 10 in the first quarter. I don't need to tell you the percentage on that. And Borlase, 11 from 12. She opened her campaign with 92%. Also impressive, Lochhagen for New Zealand. Equivalent stats to Borlase, so it's a duel between the two international shooters. Lochhagen on 92%. Colling, as we saw, was the trend in the first test. 2 from 4. She plays a feeding role. She sat on 50% for that first quarter.
And one apiece early in the second quarter. And Monica, what did you glean at the first break?
Not a lot, Steve. Very hard for me to get into either camp, but I was watching Willering from a distance, and she was focusing on Lochhagen and also Collings, so perhaps asking them to share the shooting opportunities around. When you look at Borlase and McMahon, as Australian shooters do, they really have been quite even in the amount of attempts. As far as New Zealand go, Lochhagen being their focus. Australian coach Jill McIntosh was working with O'Donnell and Toms again.
Lightning footwork from Borlase. Sorry, Anne.
Sorry, Steve. Mon, as we saw in the first test, New Zealand have rejigged the back line, and Meni's moved back to keeper Blair at goal defence. How do you think that worked for them in the second part of that first test?
I thought in that second part of the test, there really wasn't that much concern for the Australian shooters. They were fairly dominant, and I don't really think that's where the problem lies. It's the attack line as such. They're working with one shooter, and that is Lochhagen. Colling's feeding her, and Colling really does have to take it up to the Australian defenders and put more shots up for New Zealand.
Well, thanks, Mon, and the New Zealand crowd not appreciating the fact that advantage wasn't played there, and I have some sympathy for them. But hopefully Colling will goal here.
Well, it deserves the goal. It was a magic pass, Colling onto Lochhagen.
Now, interesting rule applied there by Sharon Burjan.
Yeah, just as we look at the replay, the pass off the boards to Lochhagen was something quite special. And we do expect to see some difference both ends of the court. Australia, of course, applying the international rules as they've newly been written. A player not having to stand beside the player that has a fringed. And also the fact that you can't break your distance within the 3 seconds and stay within that area.
Oh, turnovers all over the place. It's a little bit scrappy at the start of the second as Hardcastle does the no-look pass, and a little use of the hip there indicated by Sharon Burge against Illich. Lochhagen steady, 8 the difference.
New Zealand circle.
Colling, the captain. Oh, that's a loose one. Her partner wasn't watching, and Australia could do with a steadier here. It's been pretty scrappy. Toms. Oh, wide open is Borlase. Now, that happened a couple of times in Hamilton when they're trying to play this mid-court zone, and it brings all their players to the centre third, and goal shooters can find themselves open.
We made the point several times in the first test that whilst there seems to be congestion with the zone, you really do need to check the back of the zone, and Harvey picked it up in the first test with great success. That time it was Tom's. But New Zealand do sag and move their players off, trying to create an open corridor that looks like it's available, but Australia looking well past it.
Robry, Hardcastle, Lochhagen, good take. And good goal. No, it's not. But Colling. Oh.
As she did in the first test, very few chances, but a couple of them from out of court.
A special.
Let's take another look. Lochhagen rings it, but Colling, good position, pushes it from out of court.
Well, perhaps when she has less time to think about it, she puts up a better shot. Ball A's with it now for Australia. And the difference is back to 7.
Nice contact.
So 5 apiece. Now 6-5 in the start of the second quarter.
Sherelle McMahon showing outstanding composure for one so young. She really has slipped into... Oh, and there's a pinball machine session.
Yeah, Harvey going backwards and forwards between two players, and she's wandering off, just looking to sort out the bumps and bruises there. Found herself caught between two players. I wonder how this happened as Leanne McKilser comes out to assess the damage. Watch Harvey chasing the ball there.
Well, she had good position to the ball and just a little bit of angst between Hardcastle and Harvey. Harvey not one to show pain or to stop without cause. She looks a little distressed.
I think they're all carrying a few bumps and bruises. Fell into Lochhagen, but I think the damage was done before then. Oh, Monica, how would you like to be out there?
Love to.
Don't give her that option. You'll be doing it by yourself. Come on, I'll meet you down there. How long will it take you to change?
I'm just going to cut my nails and I'll be right.
You do ask us silly questions.
Of course. And I get silly answers. Harvey's all right. O'Donnell. So 10 minutes left, second quarter, and Australia in control but not increasing the lead. Toms.
McMahon uses the baseline well, just watched it open with Borlase offering the strong move for the ball and just sagging that little bit of space, opened the opportunity for Toms.
Trina Wagg, Sarah Sutter there, enjoying this performance from the Australian team.
Brings up a terrible problem for Jill McIntosh. If you had to put out your best 7, how would you do it? How could you choose?
Well, I guess what could have happened here, Anne, is that she's changed the combinations, and as much as that's a challenge for the Australian team, it also is for New Zealand. They don't know some of these players. They've never played Illich, they've never played McMahon, and that presents challenges too. Oh, O'Donnell down heavily.
And Sharon Burge forced to call the throw-in because nothing came from Bill Alexander. I was a little disappointed. I felt Blair might have set up O'Donnell on that one. Let's have another look as O'Donnell came through to the ball. Blair, though, setting her up from behind, and I think under another whistle that may have gone as causing contact. Sharon Burge, though, of course, responsible only for the sideline throw-in, so she could do nothing about it.
Yes, outside the circle.
And the pass must be retaken. 8:40 to go in the second quarter as Hardcastle looks to get it in. She's overplaying that bounce pass across the circle, Anne.
Yeah, I was thinking it just wasn't necessary. That's one of those moments like State of Origin footy where possession and hanging on to it might be the better option. We won't talk about that, though.
Oh, dear. A couple of New South Wales supporters really suffering today, and Vicky Wilson telling us all about it.
I thought about ringing it, but no, it would have been too much for my ego to endure.
McMahon swoops on it.
And that was a good choice. She wasn't carried away with the adrenaline of the intercept. She held it a moment longer to allow for a good option. Footwork call against McMahon then.
And quickly taken by the Silver Ferns, and it's got to come back.
How good was Harvey then, though, in getting a deflection?
A 20-goal first quarter from Australia, eclipsing anything they managed in the first test. It's 16, 15, 15 and 12 across the 4 quarters in Hamilton, and opening with 20.
Just at the back of the screen there, Yvonne Willering has walked along a bench and she's pumping out some messages to the girls that are suited up on their sideline. Lois Muir, a fleeting glimpse in the maroon jacket of the former New Zealand coach.
Australia with a 9-goal lead halfway through the second quarter as Toms works the corner. Borlase makes O'Donnell work the other side.
Again, the base opening for McMahon.
She's too quick. Once she's on Bernice Meni, I mean, it's all over.
And that's what McIntosh was hoping for.
Isn't it nice to see a coach smile? Jill McIntosh is obviously enjoying this. But often, whether they're winning or losing, they sit there grim-faced. I mean, they're as nervous as the players.
They give us nothing, some of them. Oh, good solid block from McInnes. Just couldn't haul it in on the end of the fingertips.
Well, a scrappier second quarter. Monica, would you agree?
Yes, Steve, I would agree, but I'm here on the sideline here, parallel to Jenny Borlase and McMahon, and McMahon is just a joy to watch. I'm watching her eyeline as she puts the ball up. She's playing with the composure of a player that's been in 2 world tournaments, countless nationals. She's just so fluent and just so mature at this young age.
I thought in that passage down court there might have been ruled a couple of short passes, but certainly one was ruled against the Kiwis doing something similar earlier in the match. The Australians a bit fortunate, I feel, there. Toms, Borlase, O'Donnell. The lead is 11. Oh, Borlase. Borlase and McMahon are just too good at the moment for Blair and Meni.
Contact, quick defence. Offside centre, free pass in the circle.
5.5 left till half-time.
Vantage contact.
Steve, I guess we should remind our audience with the new international rules for unlimited substitution. I guess an option for Willering, if she is unhappy with the second quarter, is to go back to the first quarter defence combination.
And she may be considering Julie Dawson as a mid-court player. She came on in the first test. I'm sure Willering feels she's got her best players out there. They just can't do the business at the moment.
I think that could well be the problem she faces, and whilst we've seen glimpses of brilliance from the Silver Fern lineup, as soon as the gap opened, it opened so quickly.
Here's O'Donnell. Borlase leading out. McMahon on the baseline. Won't be afraid to shoot from there. Blair, oh, that was the 3 seconds. No, doesn't matter. New Zealand ball, I think they deserved it. She waited an awfully long time to shoot and got away with it, but not the goal. Colling. Hardcastle. Good one for New Zealand to get here.
Oh, and it goes against Colling, and what a battle that was for the last few seconds between Harvey and Colling. Colling really unable to shake her.
Illich to McInnes. Toms. It's pretty crowded in the midcourt again. Borlase makes some space. O'Donnell. McMahon with that standing jump we've admired all season. Doesn't she get up?
And no pole.
McIntosh and Lisa Behag behind her. They've brought quite a sizable squad here as Illich goes up.
Great work from Janine Illich. Mind you, the ball was dropped short. It needed to go behind Lofhagen so she'd go up and stretch, but Illich read it well, and that's another great move from Borlase. The movement in the Australian shooting circle really has New Zealand bothered. It's not just one moving shooter, it's the fluency between the two and the speed that McMahon and Borlase can put out.
Australia by 13. Now, the Australians in the squad have to fight so hard for a starting 7 position, and when they get out there, it seems like they're all making the most of the opportunity.
Monica, it appears to me that Sutter may have left the Australian bench. Could be wrong. Is there a chance she's warming up for a touch of this test?
2 players have left. In fact, Dan, it's Liz Ellis and Sarah Sutter, but Sutter left her tracksuit top on whilst Liz Ellis took hers off, so perhaps Sutter is just warming Liz Ellis up. I'll let you know after the half-time break.
Thanks, Mon.
She'll be brave to take Illich off. Illich has played well, I think. I wonder what combinations Jill McIntosh is considering. Borlase is making this lead straight out from the circle a lot and isn't getting checked.
Well, it's working so well for the Australians. They know to stay away from the corners where New Zealand love to come out, but I think the speed with which she makes the move out of the circle, and it's, of course, a move New Zealand aren't used to playing. Their shooters are quite circle-bound, that it's really hurting them.
Yvonne Willering does not know which way to turn. Certainly doesn't want to look at the scoreboard, which says 34-20 Australia.
Violence contact goal attack.
So they're up by 7 at quarter time, Australia, and they're in danger of doubling that lead in the second quarter. They really only seem able to run with the Australians for short bursts. Toms, McMahon bounces one in accurately for Borlase, who should finish. They're working up a sweat. The pace certainly telling, but it's the Australians who seem to be coping with it. It is quite warm in here. It's just about winter in Wellington. Everyone's saying it's unseasonably warm. But Australia relishing the atmosphere. 35-22, 1:40 left on the clock. And Harvey, no option there.
Harvey takes signage as she tries to re-enter the game, and New Zealand have scored. Bill Alexander, I think, did call time because of Harvey's trip over the signage.
The signage made its way onto the court. I think Bill did the right thing. Now, where does he want it to restart?
They're just trying to clarify where the ball was when Bill Alexander blew for time. Sharon Burge knows exactly what she's on about and is setting up the retake for the restart. Of course, the Wellington crowd not fussed about that.
Back it up a bit. I control this end, back it up.
And Sharon Burge just getting territorial there about who controls where. And they knew what they wanted to do. It was just a matter of setting the position. Lofhagen kept it in. New Zealand possession after having gone out.
Well, that was a little too open for New Zealand, but I guess with that lead, Australia can have the odd laps.
And Monica, you've got to be impressed with this effort second quarter from Australia.
Certainly am, Steve. When you consider the first test, there was a 5-goal margin at the quarter break, and I think also a 5-goal margin at the half-time break, and leading into the half-time, Australia looking very good, 12 ahead.
50 seconds left, second quarter. And this is scrappy, sort of uneventful stuff.
And the penalty will be retaken because Simone McInnes was participating from an out-of-play position. I guess she was directing the circle defenders verbally.
And now New Zealand trying to stop Australia scoring. They know it's the last few seconds of the quarter. O'Donnell, can the Aussies score again? Oh, McMahon, great take, Borlase. Doesn't have to hurry.
Wonderful delivery, McMahon to Borlase, and she's rewarded.
They are playing so well. Now there's Therese Tairi, another attacking player. Might see her on in the circle. Oh, Borlase can't quite. But that'll complete the action for an eventful second quarter. Third quarter action with Julie Dawson in possession for New Zealand, and they need something. They don't need a turnover straight away, though, Anne.
No, they don't. And just recapping the shooting stats to date in the match, Lofhagen has put up 17 from 21 at 81%. Belinda Colling, who has now left the match, the New Zealand captain having walked to the bench, put up 6 from 8. For Australia, gosh, you've got to put your hands together. Borlase, 19 from 20, 95%, emulating Vicky Wilson, and you can't get much closer. And McMahon, 17 from 19, 89%. So both Australian shooters in brilliant form.
So the changes, New Zealand have benched their captain, as Anne said. Colling is off. Lofhagen has moved from shooter to goal attack, and Therese Tairi is on. Dawson replaces Anna Robry at centre. For the Australians, Harvey moves up to wing defence. Illich goal defence. Liz Ellis is on, so Simone McInnes gets the break. But again, we would suggest that's just to try a different combination. Those players who are on were doing a magnificent job.
And no joy in those changes for New Zealand. And in fact, we thought that may have been the starting line for Australia, simply so that McIntosh could look at another combination, because it's a very strong one.
So a miss from McMahon, but Borlase is there to take the rebound between two very tall players. Everything working Australia's way. Loughagen.
Contact goalkeeper, pass and shots.
And here's Tahiri. We've seen her play many times. Ellis
Goal attack.
works it in. Well, Monica, changes are plenty. What might these mean, do you think, for the flow of the game?
Just reorganised my chessboard here, finished writing up all the changes, and I think as far as New Zealand are concerned, I don't know whether they have resigned themselves to the fact, but in the New Zealand camp, as we see a turnover there by the New Zealand goalkeeper, but New Zealand camp was very subdued. There wasn't
Contact goalkeeper,
any
pass and
cause for concern, voices at a monotone level, you know, everything's still fairly calm. Australia much the same, Steve, so whether the last 30 minutes will be played out, I just thought New Zealand would have more intensity at half-time.
Monica, what they do gain by the entry of Teresa Tahiri into the circle is two shooters that can put them through and take net. Do you think they will lose some movement with Loughagen being brought down court?
I haven't seen Loughagen in goal attack, Annie, so you're probably more of a specialist in that area to talk about Loughagen, but she seems to be a Lopier type of player. New Zealand, to me, look like they need a driver onto the ball, and perhaps Tahiri needs to go out into goal attack for that movement.
What they may well do, Steve, is sag both goalers back and leave them in the close proximity of the circle and let their mid-court run it down and afford their shooters the luxury of resting up a little in that circle.
shooter.
Liz Ellis, prominent early. That left knee strapped, which she slightly injured in the first test. Borlée is just waiting for one from Harvey, her fellow South Australian, if not clubmate, Sora.
And it was the obvious pathway. New Zealand had pressed right down, packed the middle and left it really open at the back.
A 4-1 start to Australia. Well, looking back over recent years, 21 goals, the biggest margin in the last 4 or 5 years, in the third test in Australia in 1996. And the Aussies moving towards that kind of margin.
Contact. Advantage goal, New Zealand.
That's 17 now. Belinda Colling, the New Zealand captain, must be shattered, not only to be dragged, but what's happening to her team. Dawson trying to place it in for Tahiri.
Goal defense, pass and shots.
I guess, Steve, the issue of captaincy for the Silver Ferns is an interesting one. We've talked in the first test about how many have had that honour. Nicol, many, and currently Belinda Colling. If it isn't a settled lineup that is definite having her in the starting 7, it raises the issue again for them.
41-25, 4 minutes gone in the third quarter. O'Donnell, Borlée.
Contact.
Oh.
Hold time. Defence pull out of that. There's no need for it.
And Belinda Blair just getting a warning from Sharon Burge.
Advantage goal, contact.
Well, we felt that Blair may have set one up earlier in the match and that deserved at least a mention.
Yeah, I thought earlier towards the left-hand end of the court, Blair had seen O'Donnell driving and planted herself in a pathway. On the issue of captaincy, but out of curiosity, you are there on the sideline. Can you get a feel from the New Zealand team as to which players on court are the ones that are motivational and are bringing the team together?
Advantage contact.
At the moment, it looks like the defenders solely, Annie. It looks like the forward line is perhaps easing off a little bit. Tahiri just coming on into this third term is trying, but Hardcastle looks like she's really dipping out of the game. Dawson doesn't look like she's getting much drive, but to me, Blair and Many look like they are still putting in.
That one bounced in neatly for Loughagen. 7-4, Australia leads this third quarter. Toms. Illich. Oh, a bullet pass from Toms. You know, that's great strength in the shoulders and arms to deliver a ball like that at pace accurately.
And absolute confidence. The New Zealand defenders were positioned in the circle. They allowed the gap, the pathway to the post, and they were too slow to close it.
Tahiri.
It's interesting, Steve. You have to realise New Zealand sets up that style of defence to create the impression the gap is there. But Australia just released the ball with such speed and accuracy. The gap is there and they take it.
Yes. McMahon, Toms, O'Donnell. Borlée. This is a more measured passage down court from the Australians. And just take the foot off the gas for a moment. Borlée working outside the circle, and another on the money delivery, this time from Borlase to McMahon, and you can only admire.
Well, the crowd was warming to that passage, knowing that New Zealand had held up the Australian attack, but frustrated that they couldn't spoil it.
Back halfway, goal defence. Back halfway, goal defence.
45-28, 8:20 left in the third. Leslie Nichol, former captain, has it. Julie Dawson. Oh, great take from Lofagan to keep it in, but it was too loose. Ellis, O'Donnell, McMahon. Nice turn and deliver to Toms. It's all too quick.
Contact, defence, pass or shot.
They just can't match this pace of netball, New Zealand, and it's been Australia's signature over the last 5 years.
Yeah, the lightning hands are working overtime for Australia. Belinda Colling looks on. Obvious frustration there on her face.
Contact, wing.
And whilst Australia has dominated these encounters in the 90s, then you got to go back to the 80s to realise it was the other way around. New Zealand won 13 of 21 in the 80s.
Have to say too, and I think Monica and I touched on it the other night, that was an era when New Zealand had two brilliant shooters in Margie Forsyth and Margie Kamana, both of whom were able to take strike. A lot of movement in their lineup then and some wonderful feeding. I think they're still rebuilding and trying to re-establish that era.
Crowd endeavouring to lift the Silver Ferns halfway through the third quarter, and it's Australian possession. So they just not treasuring the ball enough. Sonia Hardcastle in the attack, looks on. Harvey looking for a big outlet. She loves delivering them. O'Donnell, here's McMahon.
Obstruction, goal third.
And McMahon, have to say, through 2.5 quarters, has looked absolutely comfortable in this company.
Remembering too, this series is a yardstick as to how these two teams are shaping up towards Commonwealth Games, and Australia, with that one hiccup in Jamaica, took the warning sign well, and boy, they've put out some special stuff through this series so far.
Turnover at the other end. Monica, they just making too many errors, the Silver Ferns, to really mount any kind of comeback, aren't they?
Yes, and it is true what you say, Steve. New Zealand not treasuring the ball, but as the ball's going into Australia's forward line, Australia are treasuring the moment, because the look on the green and gold faces is just priceless. There's a calmness, they're enjoying it, they're smiling, and they are really messing up the New Zealand defence line as they bring the ball into attack.
Comes all the way back to Many. Blair. Dawson.
New Zealand just not letting the ball go either. There's a real hesitancy in release.
Hardcastle to Tahiri. That's better work. And the crowd wants more of it. Tahiri should convert from point-blank range, and does. But Yvonne Willering must be disappointed. 16 the lead, and there's 5.5 to go in the third. Oh, McMahon needs to release quickly. That's off Blair, Australian ball. Well, I'm glad McMahon's had a good outing here, because we've been talking her up the last week to our TVNZ colleagues, Anne, saying wait till she gets on the court, and they've been looking forward too, and here she is delivering.
Well, I think our threats were appropriate.
Anne and Steve in commentary, could you please answer this for me? I think over the years we've seen Australia and New Zealand have a specific style, and you touched on it, mentioning that in the 80s they were very successful. Do you feel that perhaps they're trying to carbon copy Australian style, or perhaps match it with them and it's not working for them?
We felt that, I guess, over the last few years, but I have to say, Mon, the international between these two last year at Mystery Creek and Hamilton saw a return of New Zealand to their traditional style and all the things we've learned to respect. And I thought, wow, a new fire in the belly, here we go, the trademark defence and the attacking flair are back. It's fallen off again, and I think at the moment the wheels have fallen off purely and simply because of lack of confidence.
Good take, Lofagan. A hesitant shot from her, really. But this has been a better quarter as we get towards the end of it. Australia led by 13 at half-time. They only lead by, 16 now, so they've stemmed the flow a little. Australia not pulling away at the same pace. O'Donnell, Toms, well read by Dawson. Borlase was open on the far side, and for once Australia took the wrong option. Tahiri. They've opened Australia up at the back this time.
Sweet shot from Teresa Tahiri. And that's woken them up here in Wellington.
Another 5 of those, and
I was going to say the work ahead of them, though, isn't it?
LaFagan.
Whoa, nailed it. And the experience of Carissa Tom showing as she strolls back to the centre. Absolute concentration and composure.
The Australians just hitting a difficult patch here. They're struggling a little. O'Donnell bounces it in for Borlase. Back out to O'Donnell. Oh, that's a good ball.
Out of court, though, and it becomes a New Zealand throw-in. If Australia had been a touch more patient as they looked to the far side of the circle, it opened up for McMahon under the post. It was something they'd created just by the look.
Great pressure over the ball from all the Australians down court, but New Zealand playing well now. And Harvey doesn't like the call, but needs to keep the language, or the body language at least, to herself. Bill Alexander will be in reprimand mode. Tahiri.
Smart feed from Julie Dawson to use the ground and go around the body.
3 or 4 unanswered goals from the Silver Ferns, and they're starting to look good. Well, that wasn't meant for Lofhagen, but she'll take it. Well, more by accident than design, that goal.
Well, what a run from the Silver Ferns. They've won this quarter, and they're running it home nicely. Will it be enough?
Tahiri. They're coming back. And the lead is back to 11.
Use of elbow against Kath Harvey, and the approach across to Dawson, and again around the body places Teresa Tahiri beautifully, and she replies. She's brought it back to 10.
Well, it's at least 6 straight. Jill McIntosh looking bemused rather than amused, I think. So they're certainly winning this quarter, and they probably will, because there's only 1:20 left.
Oh, a touch from Blair, but McMahon, so strong, she played through it.
And we'll get the shot now. They
Settler.
need this one, yeah. Oh, Borlase. I think that shows you the Aussies are a little bit rattled, with McMahon missing a sitter, but Borlase there.
Let's just have a look. Great shot there as we see all the space being used in the circle.
Now, penalty on this side of the court. Bill Alexander having a chat to Kath Harvey, I think perhaps saying, just settle it. But Harvey is not the crowd's favourite. We should point that out.
Nice touch there. Sonia Hardcastle asking the umpire for the ball. It's not actually the umpire's responsibility to push the ball on court. The players are there to chase it.
Well, that was over a third, but good advantage played.
Great pressure from O'Donnell. No call from Bill Alexander makes it a throw-in for New Zealand.
20 seconds left, and another goal here as three-quarter time approaches will... Oh, I thought there might have been... I thought there was a chop from an Australian arm. That's a tough call. Should be New Zealand's ball. It won't be, though.
Nearly a 3-second call then against the release on Illich.
7 seconds, 6. And get the shot away. No. Doesn't count. Does not count. But a great quarter from New Zealand. I don't know. Bill Alexander says, let's play. And the Australians won't be happy with what happened in the last 5 minutes of the third quarter. And I think they experienced a few problems there. I don't know that Kath Harvey was all that comfortable at wing defence as the Aussies turn it over straight away. McMahon going in to do some defensive work. Many. Down goes O'Donnell. Many to Blair.
Oh, beautiful
Harvey.
touch from Harvey.
I think she needs to lift, and that's the way to go about it. Borlase. Touch from Dawson. I think she's reading the Australian play nicely, as we have seen her do in previous test matches.
There's instruction.
Tahiri, if they goal everything they get, they could get a run on. Dawson has really quickened up, they say. One of the fittest, fastest track athletes around New Zealand at the moment. An 800 runner of some note.
So the last 14 minutes will be nothing to her.
That's it. Harvey.
Obstruction, wing attack.
Obstruction, Hardcastle.
Hardcastle coming around with her arms raised rather than taking distance first.
McMahon. Back to O'Donnell. Ball lays. O'Donnell. Oh, that was ambitious. Many pulled out of it. McMahon goals. And so the Aussies hit 50. Wilson and Cusack looking just a tad concerned. But, you know, we've had 7 quarters in this international series and New Zealand have only won one. That was the one we just had.
And New Zealand just denied that beautiful shot, a 3-second call going against Teresa Tahiri.
Illich. Toms. O'Donnell ridden by Leslie Nichol but unperturbed. And Borlase turns. And Many takes it. Dawson. New Zealand driving up quickly. This is nice build-up from them if Dawson can find one of her goalers. And Lochhagen. $50 to 39. Borlase. O'Donnell. McMahon. So, Monica, I guess the Aussies have only got to remain steady through the last 12 minutes to do it, but, you know, nevertheless, it's not really a lead you can just sit on. You've got to play, haven't you?
A witness to that in the third term, Steve. I looked at third quarter break there. Jewel McIntosh with the Australian side, different to the halftime break. Wanted more intensity in this last quarter. Willering as well was very animated. A different scene to the halftime talk between both sides.
Tahiri and Lochhagen look to be working well together. Tahiri's opening up some spaces. Ellis working with Illich. That's not a regular defensive combination for Australia. They're both really goalkeepers. But Toms, O'Donnell, Borlase, back across court for Toms. And one against Many, so McMahon can shoot. And 52-40. Vicky Wilson. Smile from the Aussie skipper. She hates being off court, but if she's going to be, she wants her team to win, and that's a poor feed. Too tall for anybody, even Anne Sargent.
I'll let that one pass, and in its place, I'm going to update you on the shooting stats so far in the match. For New Zealand, Tahiri, who you'll remember entered the game at half-time, she put up 9 from 11 in the third quarter, 82%, so she'll be pleased with her contribution. Lochhagen continued well. She put up 6 from 7 in the third, bringing her total for the match to 23 from 28 at 82%. For the Aussies, Jenny Borlase, just the 2 misses until three-quarter time, 28 from 30 at 93%. And Sherelle McMahon, 21 from 27, 78%.
10.5 to go. 11 the lead, Australia. That was the margin in the first test, of course. So at this stage, New Zealand haven't taken anything out of Australia, but they have won a quarter. Borlase. Oh, that's a risky one. As McMahon works them backwards and forwards.
Well, they were held up well by New Zealand, who stuck to their task, and for a long while the Aussies looked patient.
I think O'Donnell chose the wrong option, and she knows it. There was McMahon open top of the circle and didn't go for her. Dawson.
Dawson looking fluid through the middle.
Tahiri putting on some nice moves. I think she's added something.
I think she has too, and I'm just glad. I don't mind the margin. I'm just glad we're off 11.
Oh, that's congested centre pass action. Nichol chases it down. It'll be a New Zealand ball, and she'll take it. Nice little move, Hardcastle, to shake off Harvey, who retreats in defence. Dawson now. Might just about won herself a start in the third test, I think, with her performance. Lochhagen.
And Lochhagen makes it look easy, and obviously I don't like to see Australia stall, but you have to give credit to the Silver Ferns, who, when they looked like they were down and out and had come to a standstill, have lifted several notches and are right back in this match.
9 the lead, 9 to go. It's not out of the question.
McMahon bogged down, just stopped the movement, was on a hold in the pocket, made it difficult for Toms to find space for her.
And the 3,600 capacity crowd here enjoying this comeback from the Silver Ferns as McMahon pops one through to get the lead back to double figures. Jill McIntosh not looking too worried.
No, she doesn't, and that's probably the worst thing the Aussies could do, would be allow panic into the camp.
Strong rebound, Ellis. I actually think she's been a little quieter than usual in this period of New Zealand dominance. Oh, no. The teamwork's gone out of the Australian effort a bit. Nicol, Hardcastle. Nicol again, and Harvey says thank you very much through the hands of Tahiri. So Toms, Illich, O'Donnell. I think they've got a bit more brutal at the back, New Zealand, too. They say, well, we're going to give as good as we get. They say the Australians are more physical than they are.
Well, they're tolling up quite a heavy penalty count as a result, but I guess you need to be in the contest to pull those penalties.
A couple of good, strong offensive rebounds from Jenny Borlase as an animated Yvonne Willering gets into the game.
I think rebound was one of the words she was pushing forth there.
Don't let Borlase have them. Puts on a couple of moves. Finds herself out of court, though. Blair is shepherding Borlase.
Thought that might have gone against many. She was quite physical in the challenge.
Dawson placing it in for Lafhagen. Short. Contact Ellis. Tahiri will convert here and bring the lead back to 10 with 7 minutes left in the last. Willering shaking her head. Why Tamanu there? We're quite interested, Anne, to see why Tamanu was such an obvious and important presence here.
Yes, well, I hadn't noticed her sitting with them in the first test, but she is listed in the program we were given tonight as the assistant coach. We saw none of that. She was, of course, coaching the New Zealand B team against the Australian B team as the curtain raiser in Hamilton, and perhaps for that reason wasn't part of their contingent. But we saw her last year work with Willering in the one-off test in Hamilton, and I tell you what, it gives them some defensive know-how, doesn't it?
She was talking to the defenders at half-time as Toms goes back to take centre pass, and Australia, their lead is 11.
That was an important centre for New Zealand. It gave them the opportunity to break 10, bring it back to 9, but it was wasted.
Well, Monica, what do you think? Is it all a bit scrappy this last quarter for you?
Yeah, the standard really has dropped off. Many were making it very hard for Borlase, Blair for McMahon. And the Kiwis at the moment within 10, 55 plays 45. They really have played a better second half here in the second test series tonight.
I think the message that'll go out from Yvonne Willering to her team afterwards is that this is a 60-minute game. You know, they were barely in it the first 2 quarters, you know, and they've shown what they can do in the second 2.
Well, as horrible as the first half would have been for them, she'll be delighted that they now know they can do it. They can take the quarter and they can go on with it. So there's something very important to take to that third and final test, a test which is actually a Fisher and Paykel Cup in itself, isn't it? Slightly
separate contest. Toms, but still part of a series. O'Donnell, Borlase. Borlase continuing to do the job for Australia, as is McMahon. They'll come out of this match with enormous credit. 5 minutes to go. And Australia's going to secure the series. One would imagine now the lead is 11.
Goes against Sherelle McMahon, a contact call from Bill Alexander.
Contact goal, shoots out as well, please.
Oh, contact
Borlase out as well. I think, Illich runs that down a loose one. That was not so much credit for her as a bad disposal from New Zealand. Toms. And through the hands of Borlase. So things getting a little loose towards the end of the game. I actually think the effort of the first 2 quarters from Australia might have taken something out of them. They played at a blinding pace. Too good for New Zealand. But they might be running out of puff a bit now. Dawson We know she's going to finish full of running. And Tahiri. The lead hovering around 10. 4 minutes to go. I think that might be a fair observation, Monica, that the Australians in the first 2 quarters spent a fair bit of energy.
Yes, Steve, they were magnificent really for 30 minutes, and you could have used just so many superlatives in assessing the way they played. But third term, they allowed New Zealand back in, and we've seen now that there is some strength, there are some positives, and in the third test, perhaps if they start off with this lineup that they're finishing off with, and they start from the first whistle, it could be a very tight encounter indeed.
McMahon.
And this is important for New Zealand. 3 minutes still left on the clock. They trail by 9, and the pressure taken off by Toms. She was warning the team as she walked back for that last centre just to keep the edge off it and to be steady. She created the turnover then when they needed it. What a class player she is.
O'Donnell to Toms. That Australian midcourt has done a fine job today. Borlase won't drop for her. And another contact against Borlase. Dawson. Blair, Dawson, Tahiri. That's fluent build-up from New Zealand. Where was it in the first 30 minutes?
Dawson, pretty to watch down court. She floated.
She's back to her best, and New Zealand within 8.
Important touch from Harvey to hold up that New Zealand attack.
Tahiri, Lafagan, she'll shoot from there, she'll shoot from anywhere, but for once misses. O'Donnell needs some runners. McMahon does that. Toms, O'Donnell. Movement into the circle more difficult.
Yeah, McMahon needs to get into the circle and get some moves happening because it was one-on-one. Borlase having to do all the work. McMahon sitting on the periphery of the circle. They just lack the options there.
So a scoreless passage of play. Tahiri, oh no!
That's
no,
not what they needed.
No, oh dear. And the physio quickly out. This is possibly a bad one.
Oh, you have to feel for Theresa Tahiri. That was a really bad landing. She cut the circle beautifully, and you see pain instantly.
I wonder if it's knee or ankle, Anne, because it's knee.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Left knee, and she's really distressed the New Zealand goal shooter.
Oh, what a tragedy. A minute and a half to go. She has played beautifully, really made a difference since coming on. And we hate seeing this, as does Waitamanu.
As you say, Steve, she turned the game around in the second half, and she was just in the process of setting up a beautiful passage to the post.
Well, this is going to take some of the gloss off this fine New Zealand second half effort. And no one likes to see any player injured like this. And let's see if we can get another look at how Therese landed here.
Beautiful cut to the post.
And really, she did it pretty much on her own. I mean, Ellis was out of the frame when she landed.
As is so often the pattern, and perhaps it was on takeoff, and what we saw was the pain felt on landing. And I think they're trying to get some assistance to carefully remove her from the court. They don't want to rush her, obviously. It's a serious injury. New Zealand taking every precaution. Colling bibbing up. She'll re-enter the game at goal attack for the last minute 36. And our hearts go out to Theresa Tahiri. And the acknowledgement here from the crowd in Wellington, saluting her for a brilliant effort for their national side.
Well, we hope it's not as serious as we're concerned it might be. But Colling will get another minute and a half on court.
The remaining test in the Fisher and Paykel series also doubles as the Fisher and Paykel Cup match to be watching next Tuesday.
The Australians in possession, and that'll upset everybody, not just New Zealand. Nobody likes seeing it happen. And lately it's happened more often than we like.
inexperience from McMahon there, who floated a long ball cross court to the opposite sideline.
Ball A's cross to O'Donnell.
Contact goalkeeper, contact keeper.
Good stretch there from Bernice Meni. Out of play though, and she's really jagged in some rebounds for New Zealand, and they're on the run again.
Hardcastle, Colling over for Lofhagen.
And that one was for Teresa Tahiri.
The difference back to 7. So what looked like was going to be a blowout certainly isn't going to be. Fine comeback from the Silver Ferns, and this is going to be tighter than the first test.
Up goes Colling.
It's scrappy, and lack of fluency from the Australians really since about halfway through the third quarter. Ball A's. Last 20 seconds. 57-49 Australia. And 8 won't really satisfy their captain, their coach, and Yvonne Willering. Not long to go now as Australia just look for one more. They'll be lucky to get it. O'Donnell. And there's a contact there, so she can take her time over this shot, put it away, and I think that'll be all there'll be. 58-49. And that is indeed full time in the second test. So an eventful one. We hope not a